He called the kid a stray. He had no idea he was talking to the mayor's son. That was the first in a long line of mistakes Officer Frank Miller would make in the span of 47 minutes, each one digging his grave a little deeper under the pale, indifferent glow of the city streetlights. The sound came first, a rhythmic whisper of urethane wheels on smooth concrete, a sound of freedom that grated on Miller's last nerve. It was late. The city had tucked itself in for the night, leaving only the lonely and the lost to wander its empty arteries. Miller, sitting in his cruiser, nursing the dregs of a bitter coffee, decided which category the kid on the skateboard belonged to. He saw a silhouette first, lanky, draped in a dark hoodie, moving with a fluid grace that looked less like transportation and more like a dance. Then the silhouette resolved into a boy, a black boy, weaving through the deserted plaza in front of the old courthouse, a space where signs, faded and peeling, declared no skateboarding. Miller killed his headlights. He watched for a full minute, letting the irritation curdle into something colder, something that felt like purpose. The kid was good. He ollied over a 3-stair, landing so softly the sound was a mere sigh. He carved a long, lazy arc around the granite fountain, his body a low, controlled line of motion. To an artist, it might have looked like poetry. To Miller, it looked like defiance. It looked like a challenge. He opened his door, the click echoing in the quiet square. He didn't use the siren, he didn't need to. His presence was a siren. Kai felt the shift in the air before he saw the uniform. It was a sudden drop in atmospheric pressure, the kind that precedes a storm. The joy that had been singing in his blood moments before went quiet. He slowed, his board coasting to a stop near the fountain's edge. He looked up. The officer was a wall of navy blue and clipped authority, his face set in the kind of permanent scowl that suggested he'd seen the worst of the world and decided to become a part of it. "You lost, boy." The words were gravelly, each one a small stone thrown at him. It wasn't a question, it was an accusation. Kai pulled his hood back, letting the cool night air touch his face. He wasn't lost, he was more at home on these 4 wheels than anywhere else. "No, officer, just skating." Miller's eyes swept over him, a quick dismissive inventory. The worn Vans, the ripped jeans, the hoodie with a local artist's tag sprayed on the sleeve. His gaze lingered on Kai's face, on his skin. "Just skating," Miller repeated, the words dripping with mock sincerity. "You see the signs, or is reading not your strong suit?" Kai glanced at the peeling sign, its letters barely visible in the dim light. "I saw it, my apologies, I'll leave." He put a foot on his board, ready to push off, to de-escalate, to simply vanish back into the night. That was the smart play. The one his mother had drilled into him. Don't argue, don't resist, just come home safe. But Miller wasn't interested in de-escalation, he was interested in control. He took a step forward, blocking Kai's path. "Not so fast, I think we need to have a little chat." He unclipped the radio from his shoulder. "Got a possible juvenile delinquent, Courthouse Plaza, looks like a stray." Stray. The word landed and stuck, a piece of filth on a clean surface. A stray was a dog. A stray was something without a home, without a name, without value. Kai's spine stiffened. He felt the heat rise in his chest, a slow burn of indignation. He thought of his mother, Mayor Evelyn Reed, a woman who had spent her life fighting against the very assumptions this man wore as comfortably as his badge. He thought of his late father, a man who had taught him that dignity was the one thing no one could take from you unless you gave it away. He wasn't going to give it away. "I'm not a stray," Kai said, his voice quiet but clear, stripped of its earlier deference, "and I'm not a delinquent." Miller's lips curled into a smirk. He enjoyed this part, the flash of fire in their eyes right before he extinguished it. "Is that so? What are you then?" Kai met his gaze, unflinching. "I'm a citizen, and you're harassing me." That was the second mistake, not Kai's, Miller's, because in that moment he stopped seeing a kid who made a poor choice and started seeing an enemy who needed to be broken. He took another step, his shadow swallowing Kai whole. "You think you're tough, you think you're smart." Let's see how smart you are in the back of my car. The world narrowed to the cold, metallic click of handcuffs. Miller didn't handle him gently. He spun Kai around, yanking his arms behind his back with a force that was entirely unnecessary. The cold steel bit into Kai's wrists. It felt alien wrong. He could feel the officer's hot, stale breath on his neck. "What am I being arrested for?" Kai asked, his voice tight. "Resisting," Miller said, the word a lie served with a side of triumph. "And destruction of public property, those steps you were grinding on, city property." He patted Kai down, his hands rough and invasive, lingering a moment too long. It wasn't a search for weapons, it was an exercise in humiliation. Kai didn't struggle, he didn't plead. He went still, his body rigid with a control that seemed to infuriate Miller even more. He saw his skateboard, his extension of self, lying near the fountain. It was a custom deck, a gift from his father just before he passed, the bottom covered in a mural he'd painted himself, a swirling galaxy of impossible colors. It was his art. His voice. Miller walked over and kicked it. The board flipped into the air, landing with a clatter against the stone, a new scar marring the painted surface. Then he picked it up, holding it by the trucks like it was a piece of trash. "We'll hold on to this as evidence." He shoved Kai toward the cruiser, the open door awaiting Ma. The ride to the station was a study in silence and condescension. Miller drove with one hand, the other drumming a restless rhythm on the steering wheel. He didn't turn on the radio. The quiet was part of the punishment, a space for fear to grow. But Kai wasn't afraid. He was calculating, he was observing, he was his mother's son. Miller started talking, his voice a low monologue meant more for himself than for Kai. "You kids think you own the world, no respect, no discipline, think you can do whatever you want whenever you want. Your parents probably don't even know where you are, probably don't care." He glanced at Kai in the rearview mirror, a smug look on his face. "Think a hoodie and some attitude makes you a man, it doesn't, it makes you a target. You learn that lesson tonight." Kai said nothing. He stared out the window at the blurred city lights, the world he knew rendered unfamiliar through the cage of the police car. He thought about the locket tucked under his shirt, the one with the small, faded photo of his father inside. A man who had been a judge, a man who believed in the law with a fierce, unwavering passion. What would he think of this? Of a lawman whose only passion was for power. The irony was so thick it was suffocating. They pulled into the sally port of the downtown precinct. The sterile, fluorescent-lit garage felt colder than the night air. Miller hauled him out of the car, his hand tight on Kai's arm. The police station was a hive of muted activity. Phones rang, keyboards clicked, officers moved with a weary purpose. A few looked up as Miller led Kai toward the booking desk, their expressions a mixture of indifference and mild curiosity. Another one, just another Tuesday night. "What we got here, Frank?" the desk sergeant asked, not looking up from his computer. "Got a real tough guy," Miller announced, his voice loud enough for the whole room to hear. "Thought he'd mouth off to me, found out that was a bad idea." He pushed Kai forward. "Empty your pockets." Kai did as he was told, placing his wallet, keys, and phone on the worn counter. The desk sergeant, a heavy-set man named O'Malley, finally looked at him. He saw a kid, young, maybe 16, 17, scared probably. "Name," O'Malley grunted. "Kai Reed." Miller laughed, a short, sharp bark. "Reed like the mayor, you wish, kid." Kai didn't react. He just stood there, letting the humiliation wash over him, knowing it was temporary. This was a chapter, not the whole story. They took his fingerprints, the black ink clinging to his skin, a stain of accusation. They took his mugshot, the bright flash momentarily blinding him. In the photo, he knew he wouldn't look scared, he would look patient. He would look like a person who was waiting for the scales to balance. And he knew, with a certainty that was bone deep, that they would. After the processing was done, Miller led him to a small, cinder-block room with a metal table and 2 chairs bolted to the floor. The air was stale, smelling of sweat and old fear. "You get one call," Miller said, gesturing to the phone on the wall. He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, a smug smile playing on his lips. He expected a panicked call to a girlfriend, a desperate plea to a buddy. He was looking forward to the tears, the begging. Kai walked to the phone. He didn't need to look up the number. He'd known it by heart since he was 5 years old. He picked up the receiver and calmly dialed. He heard the ring once, twice, then a voice warm and professional even at this hour. "This is Evelyn." Kai's posture softened for the first time that night. The tension in his shoulders eased. "Mom, it's me." Miller's smirk widened. "Mommy, this was going to be even better than he thought." "Kai, honey, are you okay? Where are you?" The concern in her voice was a sharp, clean blade cutting through the grime of the station. "I'm fine," he said, and he meant it. "I'm at the downtown precinct, and Officer Miller has me." He didn't rush the words, he didn't plead. He stated it as a fact, a piece of information his mother would know what to do with. There was a pause on the other end, not of shock but of focus, the kind of silence that precedes decisive action. "Officer Miller," she repeated, the name now logged, filed, and marked for review. "Okay, baby, don't say anything else, don't sign anything, I'm on my way." "Okay, Mom. I love you. I love you too." He hung up the phone. The entire call had taken less than a minute. He turned to face Miller, his expression unreadable. Miller pushed himself off the doorframe, a look of theatrical pity on his face. "Mommy's coming to save you, that's sweet." He chuckled as he shut the heavy metal door, the lock clicking shut with a sound of finality. "You just sit tight, it's gonna be a long night." Miller was wrong. The night was about to get very short for him. He walked back to his desk feeling victorious. He'd put a cocky kid in his place. He'd asserted his authority. It was a good night's work. He sat down, propped his feet up on his desk, and started on the paperwork, drawing out the details, embellishing the narrative of the disrespectful punk and the heroic officer. He was so engrossed in his own fiction that he barely heard the phone on his captain's empty desk begin to ring. It rang once, twice, a third time. Miller sighed, annoyed at the interruption. He picked it up. "Precinct, Miller speaking." The voice on the other end was not warm, it was not professional, it was a spear of ice. "This is Chief Rodriguez." Miller's feet hit the floor with a thud. He sat bolt upright, his entire body snapping to attention. "Yes, Chief. Good evening, sir." "Cut the crap, Miller. What the hell is going on down there?" "Sir," Miller's mind raced. What could Rodriguez possibly be calling about at this hour? "I just got off the phone with the mayor." The chief's voice was a low growl, a promise of pain. "She seemed to be under the impression that you have her son in a holding cell." "Her son, Miller? Kai Reed?" The name hit Miller like a physical blow. Reed, like the mayor, you wish kid. The kid's calm face flashed in his mind, the quiet confidence. The single, unwavering phone call, it all clicked into place, the pieces of a puzzle he hadn't even known he was assembling. A puzzle that now formed a perfect, damning picture of his own stupidity. He stood up. The room felt hot. His collar was suddenly too tight. "Miller, are you there? Did you hear me?" "Yes, Chief," he managed to choke out, his voice a squeak. I have a Kai Reed in custody, yes." "You have the mayor's son in custody," Rodriguez corrected, his voice lethally quiet. "For what, Miller? What did he do that was so heinous it required you to drag him downtown in the middle of the night?" "He was skateboarding in a restricted zone, sir, and he was disrespectful." The words sounded feeble even to his own ears. Pathetic. There was a long, terrifying silence on the other end of the line. Miller could hear the chief breathing. He could practically feel the man's fury radiating through the phone. "Disrespectful," Rodriguez finally said, the word dripping with a contempt so profound it made Miller flinch. "Let me tell you what's disrespectful, Officer Miller. It's a cop on my force using his badge to bully a teenager. It's a cop so blinded by his own pathetic power trip that he arrests the son of the most powerful person in this city, on a skateboarding charge. Sir, I didn't know. You're not paid to know who people are, Miller. You're paid to uphold the law fairly. You think that badge gives you the right to be judge, jury, and executioner on the street. You think stray is an acceptable term for a citizen of this city? Miller's blood ran cold. How did he know that word? Your radio transmission is public record, you idiot, the chief hissed, answering his unspoken question. And the mayor has a copy. Now listen to me very carefully. You are going to walk back to that cell. You are going to unlock it. You are going to apologize to that young man. You will return his property. You will drive him home yourself if you have to. And then you are going to go straight to my office and wait for me. We are going to have a long, long conversation about your future. A future which, at this moment, looks about as bright as the inside of a coffin. Do you understand me? Yes, Chief, Miller whispered. His hands were shaking. His career, his life was flashing before his eyes. Get him out of there, now. The line went dead. Miller stood there, the silent receiver pressed to his ear, the dial tone a mocking scream. He slowly placed the phone back in its cradle. O'Malley, the desk sergeant, was staring at him, his face a mixture of curiosity and dawning horror. Everything all right, Frank? Miller didn't answer. He turned and began the long walk back to the holding cell. Each step was a step toward his own execution. His legs felt like lead. The smug triumph he'd felt just minutes ago had curdled into a cold, sickening dread. He reached the door. He could hear the faint sound of Kai humming on the other side. A simple, quiet melody. Miller's hand trembled as he slid the key into the lock. The sound of the key in the lock was different this time. It wasn't the decisive click of power, it was the fumbling scrape of fear. Miller pushed the heavy door open, revealing Kai sitting on the edge of the cot, his posture relaxed as if he'd been expecting him. He stopped humming and looked up, his eyes holding no surprise, only a calm, unnerving certainty. Miller couldn't meet his gaze. He stared at the floor, at the scuffed toes of his own boots. There's been a misunderstanding, he stammered, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. Kai said nothing. He simply watched, letting the silence stretch, forcing Miller to stew in his own humiliation. This was worse than any shouting match, any physical confrontation. This was the quiet, methodical dismantling of a man's pride. You're free to go, Miller said, fumbling with the handcuffs he still held. He gestured vaguely toward the door. Kai stood up slowly. My property, he asked, his voice even. Right, yes, of course. Miller turned and practically fled the room, Kai following at a measured pace. Back at the booking desk, Miller unlocked a locker and pulled out Kai's wallet, keys, phone, and the scuffed skateboard. He placed them on the counter with hands that trembled slightly. He avoided looking at the mural on the board, the swirling galaxy that now seemed to mock his own small, dark world. Kai picked up his things, tucking the wallet and keys into his pocket. He held the skateboard under his arm, his fingers tracing the new scratch. It was a scar now, a reminder. I believe you have an apology for me, Officer Miller, Kai said. It wasn't a question. Miller's head snapped up. His face was a mess of conflicting emotions, rage, fear, shame. The entire precinct had gone quiet. Every cop in the room was watching. This was the moment of reckoning. He had to say the words. He swallowed hard, the sound loud in the silent room. I apologize, he forced out, the words feeling like sandpaper in his throat. For what exactly? Kai pressed, his voice relentless in its calm. For the illegal arrest, for the harassment, or for calling me a stray? Miller's face flushed a deep, blotchy red. He looked around wildly, seeking an escape that didn't exist. He saw O'Malley looking away, pretending to be busy. He saw the other officers suddenly fascinated by their computer screens. He was alone, utterly and completely alone. For all of it, he mumbled, his voice barely a whisper. Just then, the main doors of the precinct swung open. A woman walked in. She was not flanked by security or assistants. She wore a simple, elegant pantsuit and carried an aura of authority so potent it seemed to suck the air out of the room. Every officer, O'Malley included, straightened up. A few even stood. Mayor Evelyn Reed did not look angry. She looked something far more terrifying, disappointed. Her eyes, the same calm, intelligent eyes as her son's, swept the room before landing on Miller. It was a gaze that could strip paint. She walked directly to the counter, her heels clicking with a quiet, lethal rhythm on the linoleum floor. She stood between her son and the officer, a protective barrier of maternal and civic power. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "Officer Miller," she said, her voice a low, controlled hum that vibrated with barely contained fury. "I believe you have my son." Miller looked like he was about to faint. "Mayor Reed, he's free to go. It was a mistake." "A mistake," she repeated, tasting the word. "A mistake is taking the wrong exit on the freeway, officer. What you did tonight was an abuse of power. You used your badge, a symbol of this city's trust, to intimidate a child. My child." She took a step closer. "You saw a young black man and you saw a threat. You didn't see a citizen, you didn't see a son, you didn't see a human being deserving of respect. You saw a stray." Miller visibly flinched. "I have your file, Officer Miller," she continued, her voice dropping even lower, making it more menacing. "I've seen the pattern, the complaints that were dismissed, the misunderstandings that were swept under the rug. That ends tonight. You will have a conversation with Chief Rodriguez. And then you and I will have a conversation with the Civilian Oversight Board. Your days of hiding behind this badge are over." She placed a gentle hand on Kai's back. "Come on, baby, let's go home." Kai nodded, gave Miller one last, long look, and turned to walk out with his mother. As they reached the doors, he paused and looked back at the officer who now seemed so small, so pathetic, standing stripped of his borrowed power. The mayor and her son walked out into the cool night air, leaving a crater of silence behind them. Officer Frank Miller stood alone at the booking desk, the weight of every eye in the precinct pressing down on him. His career wasn't just over. It had been publicly, surgically, and quietly executed. He hadn't been fired by a bullet or a lawsuit. He'd been fired by a single, calm phone call from a boy he'd called a stray. A boy who, with his mother's quiet strength, had just reminded everyone in that room what real power looked like. It wasn't the power to intimidate. It was the power to endure, to hold fast to your dignity, and to watch with unnerving patience as the world finally corrected itself. Some badges are shields for the law, others are just masks for cowards. And that night, everyone saw the mask for exactly what it was.